So, if you possess the skills to, completely dismantle a company's digital infrastructure, to just effortlessly bypass their multi-million-dollar security systems and quietly take control of their most sensitive data, how do you put that on a resume without sounding like a massive liability?
Right. Yeah, that's the real challenge.
Exactly. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are really thrilled to have you with us because today our mission is to explore a stack of highly specialized sources. We're looking at internal frameworks and methodology documents, specifically things like the Adversarial Emulation and Validation Matrix and the core pillars of attack tradecraft.
Yeah, these are fascinating
They
documents.
really are. We're going to look at how to think like an elite attacker and, honestly, more importantly, how you package those, frankly, terrifying skills into a service that corporate executives actually want to buy.
Well, when you have that kind of capacity for, digital destruction,
Yeah.
selling that capability requires a very specific framework. You can't just walk in and say, I can break your stuff. The sources we're examining today outline a highly structured, closed-loop system.
A closed loop system.
Right. It's an entire methodology dedicated to take raw, destructive hacking capability
Yeah.
and translating it into highly valuable protective action for an organization. I mean, you are essentially engineering a situation where your ability to break things becomes the exact reason a company can finally trust its own security.
Right. But before you can sell that skill, the sources make it very clear. You first have to master the mindset. We are talking about a total psychological and tactical shift from traditional defensive IT to offensive security.
Completely. It's night and day.
In the notes, this fundamental shift is described as an inversion of previous domains. Because, for years, IT professionals have focused on building the citadel, making the walls thicker, the gates stronger. But in offensive security, you are no longer building the citadel. You are actively trying to burn it down to prove its fire resistance.
Yeah, you're the arsonist testing the smoke alarms.
Exactly. And by doing that, you generate something the text calls sovereign capital.
And that concept of sovereign capital is central here. The idea is that untested security is just, well, it's just a theory.
Right. And a theory doesn't really protect you.
Exactly. A theory has no tangible business value. Sovereign capital is the verifiable, proven resilience of a network. You're utilizing the mindset of the enemy, but the ultimate goal is to generate immense value or capital for the defense. But to do that effectively, an operator has to evolve through what the sources call the core pillars of attack tradecraft.
Right. Moving from basic techniques to the really highly advanced expert level operations. Okay, let's unpack this. Because looking at how an attacker evolves really shows the difference between a novice hacker and a true professional. Every attack has to start with figuring out what the target actually looks like.
Yeah, the reconnaissance phase.
Right. The notes call this reconnaissance. And at a basic level, this usually means running automated scanners against a company's public-facing servers just to see what ports are open.
Yeah, but passive scanning is entirely introductory. I mean, an intermediary might step up to active fingerprinting trying to identify specific software versions. But at the expert level, this evolves into stealthy pattern analysis.
Stealthy pattern analysis. Sounds intense.
It is. Think of it like this. A novice jiggles the digital door handles to see what's unlocked, which of course immediately alerts the security guards.
Obviously.
But an expert stands a block away, completely out of sight, and silently observes the patterns of the people walking in and out of those doors. They're looking at metadata, employee behavior, and infrastructure overlap without ever actually touching the target's network.
Wow. Okay, so once they have that silent map of the perimeter, looking at the walls doesn't actually get you inside. They still have to break through, which requires a massive leap in how they exploit vulnerabilities.
Yeah, getting inside is where the separation between amateur and professional becomes glaringly obvious. The beginner relies on um, basic script execution.
Like downloading tools someone else made.
Exactly. They're downloading and running hacking tools that someone else wrote, just hoping the target hasn't patched a known vulnerability. Now, the intermediary might write their own custom code for a known flaw, but the expert operates in the realm of novel zero-day research.
Okay, a 0 day meaning a vulnerability that the software creator has had literally 0 days to fix because they don't even know it exists yet.
You got it. They aren't just exploiting known weaknesses. They are discovering entirely new, undocumented flaws in the architecture itself.
That's wild.
It is. They're dissecting the foundational code of the network's applications to find logic errors that no security scanner could possibly detect. Because, well, the scanner doesn't know what to look for yet.
Right, right. The Citadel concept is brilliant here. It's like hiring a master jewel thief not to guard your diamonds, but to actively try and break into your vault to show you where the weak hinges are or, which motion sensors have blind spots.
Exactly. It's the only way to really know.
But here is where I get stuck. How do you actually prove to a client that you're a master thief without just accidentally destroying their actual vault? Like if you are practicing strategic sabotage and discovering novel zero days, how do you demonstrate that safely to a potential employer?
What's fascinating here is that the source material anticipates this exact problem. You don't prove your skills on the client's live production network.
Right, where a single mistake could take down their entire customer database.
Exactly. That would be a disaster. This is precisely why the methodology insists on building what they call an experiential posse, a proof of concept.
Experiential posse.
Yeah, you built an incredibly sophisticated simulated environment. This attack lab allows you to safely demonstrate the full life cycle of a campaign, showing your destructive capabilities while maintaining total control of the operation.
So let's dive into the technical execution of that lab. Because the need to safely prove these destructive skills leads us right into how these attack pillars look in practice across a modern cloud technology stack.
If you are building this experiential POC, where does the attacker even start?
Well, the foundation begins with mapping the intelligence, and the tool of choice here is Obsidian.
Obsidian, the note-taking app.
Yeah, Obsidian acts as the attacker's target intelligence database. Now remember the expert evolution we discussed earlier, stealthy pattern analysis.
Standing a block away.
Right. If you run loud, noisy port scans against a simulated target environment, you are instantly going to trigger their Cloudflare alerts. Cloudflare is designed to absorb and block those exact kinds of noisy, brute force tactics. The defense will shut you down before you even begin. You'd be tripping all the alarms before you even set foot on the property.
Exactly. To avoid that entirely, the attacker maps the target's Google Cloud Platform or GCP infrastructure passively. They analyze GNS records, they scour public code repositories, and they look at certificate transparency logs.
Okay, let me stop you there for the listeners who might not live in the IT department. Certificate transparency logs. That essentially means every time a company registers a secure website, it gets publicly logged, right?
Yes, exactly.
So instead of knocking on the company's server to ask what websites they own, the attacker just goes to the public library and reads the public registry.
That analogy is spot on. By reading those public logs, the attacker gathers immense amounts of data without ever interacting with the company's actual servers.
Oh.
Yeah. They take all this passive data and feed it into Obsidian, which builds a massive, complex topological graph. They create a visual map of the Citadel from afar, revealing hidden subdomains and, forgotten cloud storage buckets, all without ever touching the walls.
That brings us to the actual break-in, exploitation. But wait, if they are building this whole temporary attack infrastructure in the cloud to launch their exploits, aren't they leaving a massive financial and digital paper trail? Like, how do they avoid tipping off the blue team, the defenders, during the setup?
This raises an important question about operational security. The sources detail how attackers use Google Cloud Platform alongside automation tools like Terraform and NRAN to deploy a secure ephemeral command and control or C2 redirector.
A C2 redirector. Okay, let's break that down. When an attacker gets malware onto a computer, that malware has to phone home for instructions, right? The command and control server is the boss giving the orders.
Right.
But if the boss is sitting on an IP address tied directly to the hacker, the defense team will just trace it back and block it.
Which is exactly why the redirector is so vital. A C2 redirector acts like a digital smokescreen.
Yeah.
The infect machine phones home, but it connects to this temporary redirector in the cloud, which then silently forwards the traffic to the actual hacker.
Oh, that's sneaky.
It is. If the target security tries to trace the attack back to its source, they just hit this disposable cloud server, keeping the attacker's true location completely hidden. And the word ephemeral is key here.
Because it doesn't last.
Right. Using Terraform, which is essentially infrastructure as code, the attacker writes a script, and a complex network of servers instantly appears. They run another script, and it vanishes entirely, leaving absolutely no paper trail.
Man, here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because once they bypass that firewall and get a foothold, they execute what the sources call lateral movement, using the living off the land technique.
Yes, a LODL.
Right, let's really think about this. LODL is like a burglar breaking into your house, but instead of bringing lockpicks and crowbars, they just use your own smart home iPad left on the kitchen counter to unlock all the doors from the inside.
That's a great way to put it.
It's terrifying because they look like they belong there. For you listening, just imagine trying to catch an intruder who is using the exact same tools the homeowner uses to manage the house. How do you even spot them?
Well, that invisibility is exactly what makes standard detection tools completely useless against expert attackers. The sources note that once initial access is achieved in the simulated target environment, the attacker drops all external malware.
Just gets rid of it.
Yeah, malware is loud, it gets caught by antivirus software. Instead, they operate entirely using native GCP administrative tools, things like the breadcloud command line interface or XUTIL. They look exactly like a regular system administrator doing their daily job.
And the sources mentioned they use token manipulation to move around during this phase. Instead of trying to steal a user's password, which, might trigger an alert or require two-factor authentication, they steal the session token.
Right, session tokens are the holy grail for lateral movement.
Yeah.
When you log into an application, the server gives your browser a temporary token that says, yes, this person has already authenticated.
It's like a digital VIP wristband at a concert.
Exactly. By stealing that token, the attacker doesn't need to know your password. They just present the wristband to the server, and the server lets them pivot seamlessly between virtual private clouds, or VPCs, with full administrative privileges.
That's incredible. But getting inside and moving around is one thing. We still have to cover the final stage, post-exploitation. The sources call the expert evolution of this strategic sabotage. Again, because this is an experiential PC, they aren't actually burning the lab down, so how do they simulate that sabotage safely?
They demonstrate how an adversary could quietly alter a Terraform state file or manipulate a GCP identity and access management, or IAM policy.
A Terraform state file is basically the master blueprint for the entire cloud infrastructure, right? It tells the cloud exactly what servers should exist and how they connect.
Exactly.
So by quietly altering that state file, the attacker isn't just breaking a server, they are fundamentally changing the architectural blueprint of the company's network without the company even knowing.
Yeah, and manipulating an IAM policy is equally devastating.
Mm.
IAM policies dictate exactly who has permission to do what inside the cloud. By subtly changing these core configurations, the attacker can grant themselves permanent, hidden access.
Wow.
They aren't just picking a lock to steal data, they are quietly adding their own name to the deed of the house. They are simulating how an attacker establishes persistent, invisible control over the infrastructure, ensuring that even if the initial breach is discovered, the attacker still has a backdoor.
Okay, so you've built this incredibly sophisticated attack lab. You've proven you can silently map a network using public logs, bypass firewalls with digital smoke screens, use a company's own administrative tools against them with stolen VIP wristbands, and simulate total sabotage by rewriting the network's blueprint.
It's quite the resume.
It really is. But now we get to the core of our initial question. How do you actually present this? Because frankly, the narrative has to shift from technical execution to corporate communication. How do you put, I can secretly rewrite the deed to your digital house on a resume?
Well, the sources are exceptionally clear on this point. Raw hacking skills terrify executives. If you walk into a boardroom and say, I specialize in strategic sabotage and novel zero-day research, they're going to politely show you the door and then, probably call their lawyers.
Yeah, those terms sound like massive, and the sources detail a specific framework for this. The resulting product is called the Adversarial Emulation and Validation Matrix, or AEVM. And by using this matrix, you stop being a hacker and you position yourself as an adversarial architect.
That phrasing is very intentional and very powerful. An architect is methodical. An architect designs, structuralizes, and ensures stability. By offering a controlled, highly sophisticated stress test of their digital infrastructure, you are providing a premium consulting service. And your portfolio to prove this consists of 3 key components.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is the Attack Cartography Ledger.
I love that name, Attack Cartography Ledger. It sounds like an ancient pirate map, but for cloud infrastructure.
It serves a very similar purpose, honestly, and it is highly visual. Remember that topological graph built in Obsidian during the silent reconnaissance phase?
Yes, the public logs map.
Right. The ledger is an export of that visual graph. It shows the client exactly how their external perimeter looks to a motivated attacker. It highlights the hidden, easily exploitable relationships between their exposed Cloudflare assets and their internal Google Cloud data.
So it's literally a map of their weak points drawn from the perspective of the enemy.
Exactly.
Then we have the second component, the ephemeral C2 infrastructure playbook.
Yeah, this is where that automation using Terraform and AEN comes into play for the business side. This playbook is a technical demonstration of how you spin up your attack infrastructure and, more importantly, how you tear it down in minutes.
Which is huge for corporate employers.
Massive.
Yeah.
It proves that your offensive operations are exceptionally clean. It shows they're tightly controlled, fully documented, and leave absolutely no rogue architecture or lingering vulnerabilities behind once the stress test is over.
So what does this all mean? We have the map of their vulnerabilities. We have the clean operation playbook proving we aren't a liability. And then we have the final component, the red to blue translation report, also referred to in the notes as the GREAT output.
Right, the GREAT output.
A GREAT is traditionally a storyteller or historian, right? So this output tells the story of the attack. The notes say this lives in Google Workspace and translates the technical exploits like that sneaky token manipulation we talked about into a prioritized remediation roadmap for the defense team, calculating the business risks.
Yes, that's the translation part.
Now, let me play devil's advocate for a second. It sounds like it's entirely an exercise in rebranding. You're taking the exact same technical action breaking into a system and just changing the vocabulary so the C-suite can sleep at night. Is the GREAT output just corporate fluff? Is it actually doing something technical, or is it just a fancy PowerPoint presentation to justify a high consulting fee?
This raises an important question, but the distinction between fluff and value here is vital. It is absolutely not fluff. The genius of the AEVM product, and the reason corporate executives will pay a premium for it, is the translation itself.
How so?
Think about it from the perspective of a CEO. A C-suite executive does not know what GCP token manipulation is, nor should they have to. If you just hand them a dense spreadsheet listing technical exploits, you haven't solved their problem. You've just given them immense anxiety.
You've just told them the vault is broken without giving them any instructions on how to fix the hinges.
Precisely. Taking a highly complex living-off-the-land technique and structurally translating it into a clear, executive-level defensive roadmap is where the actual business value is created. Calculating the business risk means quantifying why that specific vulnerability matters to their bottom line. It means saying, because this token can be manipulated, an attacker could access your customer financial records, which would result in this specific regulatory fine. The translation from offensive poison to defensive antidote is the actual product being sold.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The raw technical skill is just the raw material. The translation is the manufactured good. And that brings us to a really elegant synthesis of all the sources we've looked at today.
Yeah, it really ties together nicely.
This entire methodology we've been discussing is, at its core, a brilliantly designed closed-loop system. Think about the technology stack involved in the life cycle of this process. Obsidian acts as the attacker's brain, silently storing the intelligence, mapping the target from afar without triggering alarms. Google Cloud Platform and LANGN serve as the weapons system, deploying the ephemeral C2 smokescreens, executing the bypass, and facilitating the lateral movement.
Right.
And finally, Google Workspace is the delivery room. It's where the GREAT output is generated, where you deliver the antidote to the very poison that you just engineered.
That closed-loop system is the ultimate executive takeaway from these documents. By weaving these four core attack pillars into a cohesive, manageable technology stack, you aren't just hacking a system for the thrill of it. You are systematically engineering sovereign capital. You are proving the absolute fire resistance of the Citadel by controlling the flame at every single stage of the burn.
To you listening right now, we know we've covered an immense amount of ground today. The sheer density and intensity of the tactical tradecraft discussed, from stealthy pattern analysis and certificate transparency logs to living off the land and manipulating Terraform state files, is profound.
Just a lot to take in.
It really is. But we hope this deep dive has provided a clear shortcut to understanding not just how top-tier offensive security operators think, but how they meticulously translate and sell the value of their deeply technical skills in a corporate landscape that is often terrified of what they can do.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the future of cybersecurity, I want to leave you with a lingering thought based on the strategies we've explored today. The sources detailed how expert attackers bypass modern defenses by living off the land, abandoning external malware entirely to use a company's own native administrative tools against them.
Yeah, using their own tools against them.
But if defensive teams are constantly updating their rules, their algorithms, and their monitoring systems to catch these incredibly subtle native tool tactics, at what point do those native IT tools become so locked down and aggressively monitored that regular, legitimate employees can no longer use them to do their jobs without triggering a massive red team security alarm?
That's a great question.
Where exactly is the line between a perfectly secure cloud environment and a completely unusable one?